Hello, everyone. Welcome to this study guide series. My name is Dr. Malik Rahim, and in this video series, we're going to go to reviewing the most important concept that counselors in training must know in order to successfully pass the the National Counseling Examination and the CPCE, which is used mostly for comprehensive exams in the master level programs. And I'm not going to go into total depth for everything because the thing about these courses take, 10, 15 weeks. But what I will do is try to cover the basic highlights of them to give you prepared on some of the things that you might need to re-go over, okay? These exams are designed to evaluate whether um, you have mastered the 8 core knowledge areas of professional counseling. And these areas are based on KCREP standards, and they represent the foundational competencies of the counseling profession. So across this series, which I'll try to post the whole series um, by the end of next week, um, we will break down each of these core areas, review some of the key theories, some of the key concepts, some of the terminology, and focus on style thinking and connect them to real counseling practices. Okay, and these 8 core dominant domains that we will be covering include one, professional counseling orientation and ethical practice; social and cultural diversity; human growth and development; career counseling and development; counseling and helping relationships; group counseling and group work; assessment and testing; and research and program evaluation. Okay, so in this lecture style, I want to give you a high level overview of these domains and highlights the major concepts you should expect to see on exam. So, a real quick overview of all of them. I'm going to do this real quick overview, and then we're going to start the series of getting into depth, a little bit more in depth with each of the 8, okay? So, in professional counseling orientation and ethical practice, this domain focuses on the professional identity of counselors. And here, students should understand the history, roles, and responsibility of professional counselors. So, some of the key study areas that you should know is the history and development of counseling, major counseling organizations, ethical standards and codes, licensure and credentialing, professional roles and responsibilities, advocacy and social justice and counseling. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to try to cover in that domain. And one of the most tested areas here is ethics. Okay, so really know your code of ethics. Students should be familiar with things like confidentiality, duty to warn and protect, informed consent. What is that? What is dual relationships? And ethical decision making models. All right. Students should also understand the role of organizations such as the American Counseling Association and the National Board for Certified Counselors. Okay. Those are the major two. There's others, but those are the major two. The ACA Code of Ethics is one of the most important documents counselors should know, especially when dealing with this domain. Okay. Um, Common exam questions in this area include what should a counselor do when confidentiality conflicts with safety? When when must a counselor break confidentiality? And what constitutes an ethical boundary violation? So understanding ethical reasoning is critical. The second domain that we're going to go over is the social, cultural, and diversity. This section focuses on multicultural counseling competence, and counselors must understand how culture, identity, intersectionality, oppression, privilege, and systemic power and oppression and structures influence mental health and the counseling relationship. Some of the key areas that we're going to focus on as far as studying is that you should understand cultural identity development, multicultural counseling competencies, social justice counseling, racism, discrimination, and oppression, microaggressions, cultural humility. You should also understand how identity variables influence counseling. These identity variables include things such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, spirituality, disability, and social economic status. Now, there are many other identities that I didn't mention, but these are some of the key areas that you should know. Major concepts that you should know that we're going to try to focus in on. You should know the three components of multicultural counseling, right? And the three components of multicultural counseling is this, and being multicultural competent. Awareness. Being aware of your own biases, being aware of what triggers you, being aware of what's around you and what's around your client. Having knowledge, having working knowledge on the culture of the client that you're dealing with, and actually having the skills to actually implement multicultural counseling and having to implement the things that you need to do to help that client feel safe and comfortable, okay? Counselors must also understand how systemic oppression impacts mental health. For example, things like racism, intergenerational trauma, cultural mistrust, institutional barriers to mental health, epigenetics. These things are going to be key as far as being able to understand how oppression impacts mental health. The third domain that we're going to look at in this series is human growth and development. And in this domain, it focuses on lifespan development. Students must understand how people develop physically, cognitively, emotionally, and socially across the lifespan, right? Some of the key theorists that you should know in this major development theorists include, but not limited to, Sigmund Freud, Erik Erikson, Piaget, Kohlberg, and Vlasky, right? Students should also understand attachment theory, identity development, personality development, impact of trauma on development, okay? Some of the focuses on exam include stuff like what developmental stage is a client in, right? What developmental tasks should be occurring? What happens when development is disrupted? So those are some of the key areas that you will need to know when taking these exams for this domain. The next domain that we're going to cover in this series is career counseling development. This section will examine mostly how individuals choose careers, development of vocational identity, and navigating the world of work. Major career theorists include things, but not limited to, Donald Super, and how lifespan and lifespan theory are interconnected. Holland, right, and personality types. Crumbles and the social learning theory of career decision making. Those are some of the key theories that we're going to look at. But it's not limited to just those. Some important concepts you should know is career maturity, career adaptability, different career assessment tools, vocational identity, and work-life balance. The Holland model is one of the most common tested concepts. And the 6 personality traits and types include realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And those are some of the things that we will cover in the career counseling development. Okay. In counseling and helping professional relationships, this domain is one of the largest sections of the exam. Okay, most of the exam, a lot of the questions are taken from career, but this has a lot of things that are potentially can be asked. So what I want to do is make sure that you understand these concepts as well. All of them are important, but when we focus in on each series, whichever you feel your weak is in, I want you to watch those videos. But here in the career and helping professional relationship, this domain is one that students must understand counseling theories, techniques, and therapeutic relationships. Some of the major theories and concepts that we will cover, but not limited to, is Carl Rogers and how he's associated with as the founder of person-centered or client-centered therapy. Aaron Bett, who focuses on cognitive theory. Albert Ellis, who is focused on rational emotive behavioral therapy or REBT. Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. French Pearls and Gusteau. Adler and Adlerian. So, but these are not the ones that we're going to be limited to, but these are some of the key theories that we will cover in this series, okay? And then some of the core counseling skills that you should understand that we're going to kind of discuss is reflections. Reflection of feelings, reflections of meaning, paraphrasing, summarizing, open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, immediacy, and empathy, right? Carl Rogers emphasized three core conditions that we're going to discuss, and that's empathy, congruency, and unconditional positive regard. These all quite possibly will appear on the exam, and they usually do, and it's usually frequent. So we're going to focus on those key areas, right? When it comes to group counseling and group work, you must understand how counseling groups function and develop, and some of the major group stages. So, of course, we're going to talk about, Yalom, and we're going to talk about Tuckman, right? Typical stages include forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjoining. The different types of groups that you should be able to understand, but not limited to, because we're going to talk a lot about all of them in this series, but psychoeducational groups, psychotherapy groups, counseling groups, task groups. We're going to talk about the different theories, the therapeutic factors, all 11 of them. But some of the key, if you don't remember, we're going to be talking about universality, installation of hope, catharsis, interpersonal learning. We're going to be talking about all 11 of them. Assessment and testing is the next domain that we're going to be talking about. And in this domain, focus on psychological testing and measurement principles. And students should understand how assessments are used in counseling. And some of the major concepts that we're going to go over and that you should know are reliability, validity, standardization, norms, and percentiles. We're going to talk about different types of tests, and you should understand the different types of tests like intelligence tests, personality tests, achievement tests, and aptitude tests. And we'll talk about the differences. You should also know the difference between a norm reference test and a criterion reference test. And in this series, there's some things that we're going to discuss. And finally, in research and program evaluation, in this domain, focus on the research literacy and evidence-based practices. And here that you should understand how research informs counseling practice. And students, what we're going to focus on is understanding quantitative research, qualitative research, mixed method research, experimental designs, variables, hypothesis testing. Some of the research terms that you should know that we're going to discuss are going to be independent variables, dependent variables, a control group, randomization, and statistical significance. So you must, as a counselor, understand program evaluation, which is used to measure whether counseling interventions are effective. Okay? So in this series, Uh, we're going to go deeper into each of these 8 core areas and focus specifically on the concepts that are most frequently tested on the NCE and comp exams. Okay. Um, each lecture will include key theories, important terminology, common exam questions, real counseling applications. So as we are getting you prepared for the exams and mastering these domains will dramatically improve your chances, hopefully, of success. Um, so I'm creating these videos to try to help as best I can. Um, they'll be going up every day starting um, on Monday. And so in this next video, what we're going to do is we're going to begin with professional counseling orientation and ethical practice, which form the foundation of the counseling profession. So with that, I want to thank you. And like I said, be on the lookout for the links and starting on Monday. Thank you.